And we continue at 107 in the afternoon. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show. Broadcasting live from the Morongo Casino Resort and Spa Living Room Studios. And every time I say that, I want to play the Buffalo machine and get the bonus. Mr. Randy Wang's at the sports desk in Culver City.
John, now that we know that the off-duty pilot that tried to take down a plane was high on shrooms, do you think that Scott Wiener's going to try to get that legalized again next year?
You know, if you were trying to destroy the state, could you do a better job than what they're doing right now?
It would have looked really bad if Newsom didn't veto that, and we find out that a guy tried to take down a 737 because he was shrooming too hard.
So the flight that he was on was from the state of Washington to San Francisco, correct?
That's right.
Are mushrooms, magic mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms, legal in the state of Washington?
No, but you know who to call.
Okay. And if you're a pilot, you're not allowed to take any kind of drug at all. You can't take Xanax if you're a pilot, let alone the illegal drugs. And they can force you to pee in a cup at any moment, or a blood test, or a urine test.
If you're going to do that stuff, go to Big Sur, go to the woods, go to the movies. Don't get on a plane, especially if you're in a cockpit.
And you're the pilot. You watch. He's going to play the victim now. He's going to play the victim, and there are people that are going to give him sympathy. Oh, pilot's got a lot to deal with. So he let his hair down on vacation and took some magic mushrooms. He wasn't the one who was supposed to be flying the plane that day. So he tried to take the plane down in midair. What's it to you? Sometimes I feel like I'm the one on magic mushrooms looking at the news.
With today's news cycle, it definitely can feel that way.
Everything in the newspaper today looks like it's from The Onion. There is nothing, either locally or nationally, that looks like it's real news. Everything looks like it's some kind of satire. It's just one of those days. All right, joining us now to talk about all of the insanity going on here in the state of California, former Los Angeles County Supervisor Mike Antonovich. Supervisor Antonovich, welcome.
Well, thank you, John. Thank you for inviting me to be on your program today.
Well, thanks so much for stopping by. Let's start out by talking about George Gascon, because I know you're no fan. I'm certainly not a fan. But every time you open up the newspaper, he finds a way to outdo himself with stupidity. Most recently, there was a girl who was a 13-year-old girl in Harbor City who was brutally beaten by an adult for no reason at all at a McDonald's when the girl stopped at the McDonald's after school for a snack on the way home. The woman who allegedly is responsible for the brutal beating that almost killed her is a 31-year-old single mother of 7. That's who was the attacker, allegedly. And George Gascon took the information that the LAPD turned over to him, and from that information, which they recommended felony child abuse, he decided to charge the woman with a misdemeanor instead. I couldn't believe my eyes when I read that report. Your thoughts?
The problem that you have with the current district attorney, victims of crime are the victim, and the criminal is the victim. And he has reversed this justice system that we need a change. And he did. I listened to you yesterday, and he, coming from the LAPD and then going to San Francisco, whatever, he has changed 180 degrees from being a law enforcement supporting justice to now supporting injustice. I'm personally supporting Jonathan Hatami, who's a seasoned district attorney, prosecutor. And if you remember the case with Gabriel Fernandez, whose parents tortured and killed him, Jonathan was the district attorney that got the convictions on that case in the Antelope Valley. But he, along being an Army veteran, has experience, and you want to have a district attorney being elected, and hopefully we can get 51%, 50 plus 1% in March when the election is, that Jonathan will be elected, and so he can hit the ground running and clean out that office. But it's coming from the school boards. They're making the parents the enemy, and they're making the teacher, the union's teacher, the parent, which is not correct. In Glendale, the city of Glendale, their Board of Education is telling the parents, you cannot come down to the Board of Education and at their meetings and talk on public comment. That takes up too much time because they're complaining about the schools. You meet with our superintendent and make a schedule and tell them. Don't tell the board. They're making the parents the enemy and saying, instead of being a part of the schools with their children for a quality education. So it's happening in education. It's happening in law enforcement. Men and women are not signing up for the law enforcement careers because they have so many obstacles that prevent them from doing their job. You have a governor who should be in California providing leadership. Now he's in China or Israel. This is crazy. This is crazy. We want a governor that governs. We want a legislature that makes laws that do not increase taxes as they've done in the new session, laws that are going to protect children and quality education, not creating an educational system that, again, making the parents the enemy and trying to brainwash the children. This is not the 2023. It's more like 1984. George Orwell. This is George Orwell's season. This is George Orwell's what he was telling us about. And it comes back, I like the book he had written, Animal Farm, when the pigs take over and then the animals start complaining because there's no more freedom and opportunity. The pigs say some animals are more equal than others. Well, today, some bureaucrats are more equal than the taxpayers. Some politicians are more equal than the taxpayers who put them in office and pay their salary. This is really crazy. And we don't make some changes beginning in March, and that's about, 18, 19 weeks away, that primary election, and start getting some good men and women on our school boards. In our state legislature, we have a serious problem that may not be reversible.
The district attorney in Los Angeles County, as in all counties in California, is duly elected. They're elected by the people. But the Board of Supervisors, you still have certain purview of their other offices, even if the offices are run by other elected officials. Is there anything right now within the power of the Board of Supervisors to make George Gascon's life miserable that they could be doing?
They could start doing the public pressure on the case that you just mentioned about that young girl and what happened to her and what he was recommending. Start at every board meeting, which is broadcast countywide, give a list of all of these cases that are now being recommended for misdemeanors instead of felonies or being dismissed and not being filed on in court, and tell the public week after week, this is what is being done. We are out of control, and only you, the taxpayers, can correct it.
I'll tell you this. Go ahead.
Excuse me. No, the newspapers are not printing all of these stories. Start putting them together, and it would be nice if the board as a unit, all 5 members would do this, but I'm sorry to say that some of those support Gascon.
That's what boggles my mind, because you have some of these elected officials who are out and endorsing George Gascon, and you have others who realize that he's poison and they're passive aggressive towards him. They just won't invite him to the press conference like Mayor Karen Bass, or they just don't want to answer questions about George Gascon like Gavin Newsom. But they won't publicly come out and say that the guy is a disaster and he needs to go. They're afraid to take it to that next step.
When I was supervisor and our board was diversified, when we had Gabriel Fernandez's murder take place, our board was united in taking action and supporting tough actions. And on these other cases of child abuse that had taken place, our board was always united in telling the DA, prosecute, go forward. We had different philosophical positions on issues, but when it came to protecting the children in the community against criminals, we were united. Gloria Molina voted for the jail that the board got rid of, the new jail downtown. She voted for that because she told the people who were protesting, look, those criminals are in my neighborhood. If they don't go to jail, they're in my neighborhood. We don't need them there. They should be in jail to protect the people. That attitude has changed, And I'm very dismayed and disappointed in that the leadership today is not the leadership that we had when I served as supervisor.
How much does it worry you that the reforms, and I use that term loosely, that George Gascon is imposing on us that's destroying public safety, that some of those will be problems for us long after he's gone? You can't pin the closing of Men's Central Jail on him. That was the Board of Supervisors that voted to do that. But it's not like you can build a jail overnight. If you vote to get rid of that jail and you decide to change course at some point in the future, that's not something you can do in 24 hours. If you defund these police departments, as the board has also done, you just can't suddenly train police officers and have them back out on the streets overnight. It takes time to do all of these things. A lot of the damage that they're doing is damage that the next district attorney will try to have to help mitigate, but they don't have a magic wand. They won't be able to just come in on day one and say, all right, I want a jail over here. I want 3,000 more officers over here. You can't do that.
It takes months to interview and qualify the cadets to go to the academies. And then it takes 6 months or more to train them. And then they have to go out and they're on probation for a year, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like a ship turning around. You can't make a sharp turn. It's a gradual turn. But in the meantime, we're having a very serious problem. When you have 5 to 8 million illegal aliens coming into the United States, and now that New York and other major cities are seeing what has happened to the border states, we have a problem. We have a problem from law enforcement for enforcing the law, our medical facilities in providing the service. We're not expanding the medical facilities. We're not expanding the number of doctors and nurses, but yet we are expanding the number of clients who will be using those services. So the whole system is broken. This open border policy is like a Trojan horse. It's weakening our country. And we are in a war right now. We don't know how many terrorists came in because we really were not checking. And when they did check, they found some. But we could have some very serious problems in the major cities in the coming weeks because of what is going on in Gaza, is going to be going on in our major communities today. And yet our public safety officials are shorthanded to protect us. And this is a very serious problem that we're facing.
You served on the LA County Board of Supervisors with people who were definitely liberals, people like Zev Yaroslavsky, Gloria Molina, Yvonne Burke, and others. You served in the state legislature with people who certainly fit that bill as well. But as you mentioned before, they weren't trying to drive us off the cliff at 100 miles an hour. They had a different worldview than you, but they knew that ultimately their job was to make the trains run on time, that the government had to provide the services that the government was supposed to provide. And if the government wasn't providing public safety or fire services or fill in the blank, that ultimately that reflected poorly on them. The current crop doesn't seem to view the world that way. Lindsay Horvath is no Zev Yaroslavsky. Certainly Holly Mitchell is no Yvonne Burke. Sheila Kuehl and others are not the people that served before them. Why do you think it is that that's the case? My theory is part of the problem in Los Angeles is that the LA Times, even though their readership is next to nothing, they still punch above their weight in terms of the power that they have in this town. And they are maybe one of the most malicious forces in this city. And they're advocating for every policy that we just talked about, whether it's closing the jail or putting George Gascon in as district attorney or whatever the case may be. They were the ones that were advocating for that. They were the ones that were leading the charge. They were the ones that were beating the drum. And I think that until you change that paper, until you make that paper healthy and looking out for the people of Los Angeles and the well-being of Los Angeles, I think a lot of these elected officials just kind of fall in line with the paper.
Well, Gloria Molina and I had the legislation, the board motion that reformed the civil service rules passed by the Board of Supervisors opposed by the unions because we knew that the bureaucracy within the bureaucracy of the county was weighted down at the detriment to the people that we serve. And we got the civil service rules changed for the better. So here we were able to work together as a team on an issue that we saw had a direct impact on the people we serve. And on the issues of on the crime bills, the proposals that we were making and recommending, we were supported. We were supported. Getting tough on the at the border, we had support. And we'd go to Washington and we would talk to the members of the administration. And so we worked as a team. We had differences from time to time, but that did not prevent us from working on it as a team. And on the bigger issues, we were in agreement. We don't have that today. Had we been in power today, the lady who's public health director would never have been hired in the first place because we would not have hired a non-medical personnel doctor for that position. And if the mistake was there, we would have fired that person after the first short time that she was in office because she is not qualified, and yet she's making over, $500,000 a year. And who has suffered? Our businesses, our schools, our kids who need jobs, because they closed a lot of the businesses. Some have never recovered from that. And we allowed the big stores to remain open. Well, why should the big stores remain open when they're selling products that the local stores were selling? It is so crazy. That would never have happened had we been in office.
What do you make of the LA Times? I think they're a big part of the problem.
They are a big part of the problem, and they probably have the most intelligence, information, background on every public servant and major bureaucrat. And they are not intellectually honest. They have an agenda, and that agenda is really against the best interests of this county, state, and nation. They have, when we say the new owner, he's letting his daughter run it, and he doesn't know what's going on. All he has to do is look at the sheet that tells them the numbers are declining, not increasing, and the paper is more of a political agenda. They don't have a diversification of opinion. I mean, in the old days, when Carl Greenberg and Dick Burkholz were the political editors, Carl Greenberg was the Republican, the conservative, Burkholz was the liberal. But they had different points of view. Today, it's only one point of view, and it's liberal or woke. There's no in between. And they're very, they're kind of like people that live in a cocoon and telling others who live in the real world what's it like and they should do more. Well, perhaps they should do more. And what they're doing now is destroying. In fact, just look at the numbers. People are leaving our state. They're not coming in. Businesses are leaving our state. I think there was we lost $30 billion in tax revenues, whatever, from money of people who left our state for Texas, Colorado, Florida, these other states. So we are on a decline. We're not on an upcline. Florida is doing well. South Carolina is doing well. Colorado is doing well. But we are not in the doing well category.
Former Los Angeles County Supervisor Mike Antonovich, thank you so much for stopping by and loaning us your pearls of wisdom. We always appreciate your time.
And thank you for focusing on local government, which the people of L.A. City and County are being denied because the papers are not focusing on local government, which is part of the problem. And that election is in March for your local officials.
Mike Antonovich, always a pleasure. Thanks so much. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, if you want to listen to a podcast of, let's say, the first hour of today's show, because you started listening sometime the 1 o'clock hour, that's not hard to do.
No, it's super easy to do. Go to KABC.com, click on podcasts, go to the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can download all of the episodes. Easiest way to listen is the KABC app. Search KABC AM in the Apple App Store or the Android Store. The best way to listen live to this station. And and then listen to all the podcasts whenever we're not live from noon to 3. And it's a real interesting thing because things change so quickly. If you download the 12 o'clock hour of this show, Tom Emmer was running to be speaker. In the 1 o'clock hour, Tom Emmer not running to be speaker.
In the meantime, what do you say we make a couple of listeners very happy?
Let's do that right now. 790 KABC welcomes Mariah Carey. Merry Christmas, one and all, at the Hollywood Bowl on November 19th. Tickets are on sale Friday at Ticketmaster.com, but right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-790-5222 gets a pair of tickets to the show. Tickets furnished by Live Nation. Good luck dialing.
It's 1:30. We might need to do Lady Antebellum the rest of the day to cheer me up, Randy.
Okay, I can do that for you. Absolutely. Although
I
they're
am
called
in
Lady
a mood.
A now. They're called Lady A now. Yeah, you've had a day.
All right. Here's what's going on. I bought a house in this HOA development, and I haven't even moved in yet because I'm remodeling. And every month I get 1 or 2 formal complaints against me by the board, including different things that you probably shouldn't even be able to know unless you're living directly next to me or you're physically in my backyard. And I just assumed that one of the neighbors on either side was the one that was ratting me out. And it's for minor ticky-tack sorts of things. No. Now I found out that someone has been illegally trespassing into the backyard and gaining the evidence that way.
Wait, they broke into your backyard because your trees didn't look the right way?
That's right. And I caught them. So now I need to figure out how to handle this one.
Well, it's an HOA, so you got to be very careful with every single thing you do here.
Oh, yes. Oh, that's for sure. So I need to figure this little pickle out.
HOAs are notoriously in the corner of the busybodies.
Of course they are, including the ones that trespass. Now, speaking of pickles, there's a pilot who was on a California-bound plane from the state of Washington who is now not just in a pickle, but, Randy, he's in a movie theater-sized pickle.
That's right. The pilot who was off duty, who apparently tried to take down a flight from Seattle to San Francisco, admitted to police he was tripping on mushrooms while he was attempting to take down an airliner.
Okay, now this is bonkers for a lot of reasons. First and foremost, if there are any pilots in the audience, any flight attendants in the audience, anyone who works in any capacity for an airline, you know that the FAA is very strict with what they require from pilots. You can't have any booze in your system when you're in that cockpit. And they can randomly drug test you at any time. And if you fail the drug test, adios, amigo. They have programs where if you have a drug or alcohol problem, you can call the 800 number, and they're more than willing to work with you while you go out and seek rehabilitation. But if you show up to the airport drunk or high on drugs, that's it. You're done. The airlines do not budge on that policy. They're very strict, and it's a very regulated industry. In fact, if you seek psychological problems or seek help for psychological problems, you have to turn that over to the FAA. And they have the ability to find out just exactly how you're being treated. You're not allowed to be treated medically. You can't have Xanax. You can't have Valium. You can't have any of the drugs that people in just about any other profession could get prescribed by a psychiatrist if they need them. And one of the criticisms of this industry is because it's so strict, a lot of pilots who are facing mental health issues don't seek treatment because they don't want to start the paper trail, and they potentially don't want to lose their jobs. Recreational drugs, that's just not even something that they entertain. You take recreational drugs and you show up to the airport high, that's it with your career. You're done. It's over. So this pilot, I guess, decided to try psychedelic mushrooms for the first time and then showed up to the airport to ride the jump seat, which is when there's not enough seats in the back of the plane. Every seat is taken, but you need a ride going somewhere, so you sit up in the cockpit with the other pilots. And, Randy, that's when it went haywire.
That's when this guy got a little crazy and tried to shut off the engine of a plane mid-flight. For more on all of this insanity, here's a report from KGW in Portland.
New details about the off-duty Alaska Airlines pilot who's accused of trying to shut off the engines of a plane filled with passengers in the middle of a flight. According to court documents, he told police he had taken psychedelic mushrooms. He's now facing a federal charge for that incident that led to an emergency landing right here in Portland. Devin Haskins joins us live now from the KGW newsroom. So, Devin, I know you read through that federal criminal complaint. What else can you tell us about it?
Yeah, Drew, 44-year-old Joseph David Emerson has been charged.
That's way too old to be doing shrooms. Shrooms are something you do 6 times in your 20s before you have way too hard of a time and you realize, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, not right before you go to work at the airport.
Yeah, Drew, 44-year-old Joseph David Emerson has been charged with 1 count of interfering with flight crew members and attendants. According to court documents, he told officers after he was arrested that he was tired and thought he was having a nervous breakdown after taking psychedelic mushrooms. Now, if convicted in federal court, this single charge could carry a 20-year prison sentence. According to a federal criminal complaint against Joseph Emerson, the pilots of the plane both said the flight started with casual conversations. The off-duty pilot was sitting in the jump seat in the cockpit. Those court documents also say the pilots explained Emerson threw his headset and said out loud, quote, "I'm not okay."
Oh, boy. At least he gave him a warning.
Yeah. If you throw a headset down and you say, "I'm not okay," my assumption is that you're the offensive coordinator for the Chargers.
They both told the FBI that Emerson then grabbed the red fire suppression handles, but wasn't able to fully pull them down. If he had, it would have cut off the fuel supply and hydraulics to both engines.
Oh, God.
Yeah, you don't want that to happen when you're 30,000 feet in the air.
One of the pilots had a brief struggle with Emerson, which they say lasted about 25 to 30 seconds before Emerson settled down.
Calm down, bro. Calm down.
Here, take this pill. Just add it to the periodic table that you've already taken in.
Can we get someone some orange juice? I heard that's supposed to end the trip quicker.
Emerson was then told to leave the cockpit, which he did, and then was restrained by flight attendants in the back of the airplane. Then, during the descent, the flight attendants tell the FBI that Emerson tried to open the emergency door, but was blocked from doing so.
He wanted to get some fresh air.
Wow, this is a man on a mission.
Wonder if he took them straight, just ate them, or he put them on a pizza. Maybe he made them into a milkshake.
It could have been mushroom soup.
When Emerson was questioned by Port of Portland police, he was quoted in the court documents as saying, "I'm admitting to what I did. I'm not fighting any charges you want to bring against me, guys." He also said, "Yeah, I pulled both emergency shutoff handles because I thought I was dreaming and I just want to wake up."
God.
Here is the strange part. I think he's probably telling the truth.
Oh, he 100% thought that this was a dream. He did not think he was actually trying to take down the plane. Maybe.
Imagine being this guy's wife right now.
He said he didn't take any medications, but admitted to becoming depressed 6 months ago. Emerson also said it was his first time taking mushrooms.
And your first time, you have no babysitter with you. You're not in a place where if you go crazy, you can get calmed down. You decide to get on a plane?
Not just on a plane, in the cockpit.
There are a lot of bad decisions that led to this moment.
No kidding.
Emerson will now appear in state court at 2 o'clock this afternoon on 167 charges, including 83 counts of attempted murder, one for each crew member and passenger on board.
Well, I'll tell you, there are a lot of people who are going to say, "Oh, cut the guy a break. He was going through some problems. Pilots can't seek treatment. He tried to treat his problems through alternate means. Don't put the guy in prison for a long time." If you were on that plane and this guy's drug trip almost killed you, you might have a different opinion. And by the way, I believe this was on Horizon, which is the regional carrier for Alaska Airlines.
Yeah, it had to be if there were only 70 passengers.
Okay. So the regional airlines are the airlines where the pilots usually have the least amount of hours. They have the least training. If you're a pilot for Big Alaska or Big American or Big United or Big Delta, they require more hours than the regionals do. The training that they have at those major airlines is different and more elaborate than at the regional airlines. So you probably have two green pilots in that cockpit that are now also having to deal with someone going on a drug trip trying to crash the plane. So good on that crew for being able to get him out of the cockpit and land that plane safely.
Anytime anyone needs to use the jump seat from now on. Are you currently tripping on shrooms, sir?
Yes. Did you eat anything that once appeared on Super Mario Brothers? If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Paul writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com with the subject line, mushrooms. This guy. Last time I took mushrooms, I couldn't keep my feet from turning into cement, let alone walk on a plane and flip a switch. This guy acted like a veteran.
Well, maybe he's lying. Maybe it's not his first time at the rodeo.
I would think not. That is especially if you are a pilot and you know what that's all going through, you the first time you try to do that, you need a real controlled environment.
Well, a cockpit could be a controlled environment if everyone behaves.
He did not.
That is true. We have one more hour coming up on the John Phillips Show, including a new story saying that Jewish Americans are now hitting the gun stores in large numbers looking to pick up firearms because they're afraid for their own personal safety given the demonstrations that we're seeing in the streets of major American cities and violence worldwide. We'll explore in more detail coming up in moments right here on the John Phillips Show, Talk Radio 790 KABC.
The drugs can make them zombie.